There are homes where silence says more than words. There are dinner tables where people sit close, but hearts drift miles apart. There are wounds that go unspoken, yet grow heavier with time. But sometimes healing begins with the smallest things: a stopped clock, a quiet poem, or a long overdue hug. Today, you'll hear the story of a family not perfect, not unbreakable, but one that chose not to give up on each other. This is not a fairy tale. This is a real journey about forgiveness, growth, and the quiet power of love. A story called The Reunion Tree. It was a Sunday in late October, the kind where the sky looked washed in a soft blue haze, and the air carried the scent of dry leaves and cinnamon-spiced coffee. At 11:43 a.m., the old grandfather clock in the hallway stopped ticking just like that, a wooden heart giving up mid-beat. That clock had been in the Parker family for 4 generations, gifted to Grace Parker, the family's matriarch, by her father on her wedding day. No one really noticed when it stopped. Not immediately, at least. Everyone was too busy pretending they were fine. Grace, now in her late 70s, sat in the kitchen peeling apples for her famous pie. Her hands moved out of habit, but her thoughts wandered mostly to her husband, George, who had passed away 2 years earlier, and to how much the family had changed since. The house, once filled with laughter and shouting kids running barefoot on the hardwood floors, now echoed with awkward silences and unspoken grief. Her daughter, Linda, had moved back in with her 2 teenagers, Sarah and Ethan, after her divorce. A once celebrated architect in Chicago, Linda now worked remotely in a job she didn't love, spending her days switching between video meetings and short conversations with her kids who were slowly drifting further into their screens. And then there was Michael, Grace's son, the dreamer, the one who left to travel the world, only to return with more scars than stories. He now lived in the guest room upstairs, helping Grace with the groceries and repairs around the house, carrying a guilt he never spoke of, but that lived in his eyes. The Parkers were under one roof again, technically together, but emotionally worlds apart. It wasn't always this way. There was once music in this house, guitar strings and piano keys, Sunday BBQs and midnight card games. But now, even dinner felt like a chore. Words were counted like coins spent cautiously, reluctantly, and then the clock stopped ticking. That was the beginning. None of them knew it yet, but something shifted that day. Like the universe gave them a signal they'd ignored too long. Something about that silence when the ticking stopped felt louder than anything they had heard in years. Maybe it was the start of breaking down walls, or maybe it was just a coincidence. But Grace, wiping her hands on her apron and looking up at the motionless clock, felt something stir in her chest, a quiet knowing. Something was about to change. The week after the clock stopped, Grace watched her family more closely. Linda, her daughter, was a master of keeping it together. She woke at 6:30 a.m. sharp, made coffee, packed lunches, and responded to emails with precision. Her face glowed from the light of her laptop, but it rarely lit up with anything else. She had always been the Achiever Scholarship winner, valedictorian, the one who got out when she moved back in after her marriage fell apart. It was supposed to be temporary, just a few months until I get back on my feet, she had said. But it had been 14 months. No new apartment, no job change, just routine, numbness wrapped in structure. Her son, Ethan, 16, barely spoke. Tall for his age, with headphones glued to his ears, he moved like a shadow school. Room, screen, Repeat. He wasn't angry, just unplugged. Grace tried talking to him once about his father, but Ethan had just shrugged. He left. We're better off. Then there was Sarah. Poor teens, sweet and sensitive, always looking for something to hold on to. She had started journaling, filling pages with song lyrics, quotes, and poetry. Grace once peeked and saw the words, "Do they even see me?" Her heart cracked a little. Michael, Grace's son, was still figuring out how to live with himself. He had spent a decade bouncing between countries, odd jobs, and bad relationships. He'd come back with a bag, a camera he no longer used, and a silence that weighed heavier than any luggage. Some days he disappeared for hours into the woods nearby. Other days he stayed in bed until noon. At night, Grace could hear the soft clinking of whiskey in a glass. He never drank much, never slurred, but the rhythm of that sound said everything. The tension in the house was subtle, but ever present, like a fog that never lifted. Small things sparked conflict. Who left the dishes? Who forgot the trash? Whose turn it was to cook? But it was never really about those things. One night, the dam broke. Linda had just come home from a long walk, her face flushed, breathing fast. Ethan was in the living room playing music too loud. Grace asked him to lower it, gently. He didn't answer. Linda snapped, "Turn it off." "Ethan, now." He glared at her. "It's just music. It's disrespect," she said, voice rising. "You don't even talk to me anymore. What's wrong with you?" Ethan stood up, slammed his headphones on the table. "What's wrong with me? Maybe I'm tired of pretending this house isn't falling apart." Silence, then footsteps. He stormed out the front door. Michael, who had been upstairs, came down at the sound. He looked at Linda, then at Grace, then out the door where Ethan had gone. Linda sank into the couch. "I don't know what I'm doing. Mom, I feel like I'm losing them." Grace didn't say anything. She just placed a hand on Linda's shoulder, warm, but trembling. Later that night, Sarah knocked on Michael's door. She held out a small drawing, an old oak tree with all their names on its branches. "I don't want us to break," she whispered. Michael stared at the paper for a long time. Then, for the first time in weeks, he smiled. That night, after Sarah's quiet knock and gift of the drawing, something shifted in Michael. He sat at his desk long after she left, holding the drawing in his hands. He hadn't touched his sketchbook in months, years, maybe, but now, staring at the branches and names, his name scrawled beside Sarah's in pink ink, something stirred. The next morning, Grace found him in the backyard, coffee steaming, sketchpad in his lap. "You're up early," she said. He nodded. "Couldn't sleep." She looked down at the sketch. Sarah's tree, now shaded and filled with detail. Each branch more alive, each name more rooted. "It's beautiful," Grace whispered. He smiled. "Maybe it's time I start drawing again." Inside the house, Linda was staring at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were tired, mouth tense. She remembered the way Ethan had looked at her, the pain, the defiance. It wasn't just teenage rebellion. It was a cry for her to see him. Later that day, she knocked on Ethan's bedroom door. "What?" he said, voice muffled. She opened the door halfway. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for yelling and for not asking how you're doing." He looked at her surprised. "I don't really know how to do this, Ethan, but I want to try. We've all been hurting. I just forgot to ask how you were carrying it." He didn't say anything, but as she turned to leave, he muttered, "I miss Dad, even if he was crap at showing up." She turned back slowly. "Me too." A pause. "Wanna go for a drive later?" "Just us," he shrugged. But it wasn't a no. Grace watched all of this unfold in silence. She cooked more often now, not because they couldn't manage, but because the kitchen had always been where the family felt closest. The smells of rosemary, garlic, cinnamon, those were her love letters. That evening, Michael joined her in the kitchen. He offered to chop vegetables, then started humming a tune, an old folk song George used to sing. Grace's eyes welled with tears, but she didn't stop him. Then Sarah came in with her journal. "Can I read you something?" They all paused. She opened the book and read a short poem. Families aren't broken when they fight, but when they forget why they stay, we all get tired. But we can rest, as long as we still make room for each other. No one said anything at first. Then Linda walked in, her voice soft. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Sarah looked up. "Do you think we can fix us?" Michael leaned on the counter. "Maybe it's not about fixing. Maybe it's about rebuilding." Grace nodded slowly, one piece at a time. That night, they sat together at the dinner table for the first time in a long while. No one checked their phone. Michael told a story about Morocco. Linda laughed genuinely. Ethan cracked a joke. Sarah beamed. The clock in the hallway was still broken. But maybe that didn't matter, because something else had started ticking again. Thanksgiving came with early snow that blanketed the small town in silence. The Parker home, usually bustling with the smell of roasted turkey and pies, felt strangely still. Grace had planned everything: the recipes, the playlist, the centerpiece of autumn leaves and pine cones. But nothing went as planned. Michael had a job interview that morning, his first in years, a position at a local art school, teaching beginner sketching. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. Linda offered to drive him. Ethan was supposed to rake the front yard. Sarah was helping Grace with the stuffing. At first, it looked like a rare day of teamwork. Then the storm came. It started with a call. Michael didn't get the job. Linda, who had been waiting outside in the car, saw the way his face dropped. She didn't know what to say. Michael got in the car, slammed the door harder than he meant to. "They said I'm not stable enough." Whatever the hell that means. Linda's knuckles tightened around the steering wheel. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're not. Back at home, Sarah accidentally dropped the stuffing dish. It shattered. Glass everywhere. Ethan, from the porch, shouted something sarcastic. Grace told him to stop. He rolled his eyes and muttered something under his breath. "Excuse me." Linda snapped the moment she walked in. "Don't talk to your grandmother like that." Michael followed close behind, shoulders tight, anger radiating. "I didn't say anything." Ethan argued. "You always say something," Linda barked. Ethan stood, defiant. "Why are you always on my case? You don't even like me." Linda froze. "That's not true, isn't it?" he hissed. "You only see what I do wrong." Michael stepped between them. "Hey, cool it. Stay out of it." Linda shot back. "No," he said, voice hardening. "Not this time. You've been picking fights for months." "Oh, so now you care." Linda's voice cracked. "Where were you for the last 10 years? Sen. The kind that pierces." Michael turned to leave. This was a mistake. Me coming back. Grace stepped in. "Now, please." He didn't hear her. He was already gone. Ethan slammed the door to his room. Sarah began to cry. And just like that, Thanksgiving was broken. That night, Grace sat alone at the kitchen table, the untouched pie beside her. She reached for George's old photograph. "I don't know how to hold them together anymore," she whispered. But across town, in a quiet corner of a park, Michael sat on a bench, snow falling around him. In his hands was Sarah's drawing the tree. A small tear had formed in one corner. He stared at it, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a pencil. He began to redraw it, slowly, with more branches, stronger roots, a sun above it. Back home, Linda sat outside Ethan's room, eyes swollen. "I'm not good at this," she whispered through the door. "But I'm trying, and I will keep trying, even if you don't talk to me." Inside, Ethan wiped his face. He didn't answer, but he heard her, and in her own room, Sarah was writing a new poem, one that ended with, "It's okay if we fall apart. Sometimes the broken pieces build the strongest hearts." The morning after Thanksgiving, the house was quiet, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that followed a storm. Grace woke early, unable to sleep. The kitchen was still a mess, plates unwashed, cranberry stains on the tablecloth. But she didn't clean. Not yet. She sat by the window with her tea, watching the pale sunlight melt the frost on the glass. Michael returned just after 7 a.m., his eyes red from lack of sleep. He walked in without a word, placed a folded sketch on the table in front of Grace, and went upstairs. She unfolded the paper. It was the tree, but different now, stronger, brighter. At the base of the trunk, he had written, "We don't have to go back, but maybe we can grow forward." Sarah was the first to speak to him that day. She came upstairs with 2 cups of cocoa and knocked on his door. "You okay?" she asked. He opened the door, nodded. "I saw the tree," she said. "It's beautiful." "Thanks," he whispered. They sat together for a while, not saying much, but it was enough. Later that day, Linda walked into Grace's room, looking tired but softer. "Mom," she said, "I think I need help." Grace looked up, "Not just with the kids, with me. I've been holding on so tight I forgot how to let anyone in." Grace didn't lecture, didn't fix. She just held her daughter something she hadn't done in years. That evening, Linda knocked on Ethan's door again. He opened it this time. "I made dinner," she said. "You don't have to come, but I'd love if you did." He looked at her, then passed her to the living room, where Sarah and Michael were setting the table. He followed her out. They sat together, not smiling, not laughing, but together. That was enough. Midway through the meal, Grace raised her glass. "I don't have a speech," she said, "but I want to say thank you for still being here." Michael raised his glass too, to starting over. Ethan added, "To not giving up," Sarah whispered, "to healing." They clinked their glasses. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall again, soft, quiet, beautiful. Inside, the family began to remember how to speak, how to listen, how to forgive. The clock in the hallway remained broken, but Grace no longer cared, because something far more important had begun to move again. Michael drawing again, living again. It started with one sketch. After that Thanksgiving, Michael began waking earlier, not out of obligation, but desire. He set up a small table by the window in the guest room. Daylight streamed in, hitting the pages just right. He began drawing again, faces, moments, old memories, and dreams never lived. One afternoon, Sarah came home from school and found a portrait on her bed. Her, reading in the window seat, the shading soft, the eyes kind. She hugged him for the first time in years. Michael cried not from regret, but relief. A week later, he brought his portfolio to a small gallery downtown. They weren't hiring, but they offered to hang 3 of his pieces for a winter exhibit. "Even one viewer is a win," he said to Grace, holding the email. He had stopped chasing big cities. What he wanted now was to stay, to grow roots, to rebuild. Linda, learning to let go. Linda began therapy. It terrified her. At first, she was the strong one, the fixer. But one Monday morning, she sat on a video call with a stranger and admitted the one thing she'd been afraid to say out loud. I don't know who I am if I'm not holding everything together. The therapist smiled gently. Then maybe it's time to let someone hold you. That week, she cried in front of Ethan for the first time. I'm sorry I've been so hard, she said. It's not your fault. I've just been afraid. Ethan didn't say much, but he didn't pull away. And the next morning, he brought her coffee. She also started journaling just 5 minutes a day. Memories, feelings, dreams. One day she wrote, I miss the version of me that used to dance in the kitchen. That night, Sarah played music while doing dishes. Linda laughed, took her daughter's hand, and danced barefoot across the tiles. Ethan, finding his voice. At school, Ethan had a history teacher who noticed his quiet demeanor. You write like someone who sees more than he says, she commented on one essay. He stayed after class to ask what she meant. She pointed to a line he'd written about war. Sometimes, people fight not to win, but because they forgot how to be heard. That line stuck with him. He began writing more journals, poems, even lyrics. He printed a few and pinned them on his wall. When Linda saw them, she cried, I didn't know you had all this inside. Neither did I, he replied. Later, he asked Michael to help him build a website. They stayed up late, sipping cocoa, choosing fonts. It wasn't just about words. It was about reclaiming a voice he thought no one wanted to hear. Sarah, the light bringer. Sarah became the light in the house. Every morning, she wrote a quote on the fridge. Little things like, even broken crayons still color. We heal better when we're together. Hugs fix what Wi-Fi can't. She started a Sunday tradition. One kind thing per person. She'd write thank you notes, leave small drawings, or bake muffins with secret messages inside paper slips that said, you matter or today. Smile at yourself. Everyone smiled more, laughed more, stayed a little longer at the table. It wasn't just her doing, but she lit the path. Grace, keeper of the flame. Grace didn't change drastically. She didn't need to, but she became more present. She started asking deeper questions at dinner, listening more than fixing. She wrote letters to each family member, letters they found under pillows or tucked in books. In them, she shared memories, fears, gratitude, and finally, she let herself cry in front of them, not because she was weak, but because healing allowed it. By the end of winter, the Parker house wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, tense moments, old wounds, but they were no longer hiding. They talked. They listened. They laughed sometimes even over nothing. One afternoon, Michael fixed the grandfather clock. It ticked again for the first time in months. When Grace heard it, she smiled. But this time, she didn't cry, because the real rhythm of the house had already returned in conversations, in forgiveness, in soft music playing during Sunday breakfast. They were healing. Together, spring came late that year, as if the earth itself had waited for the Parker family to be ready. It was Grace's idea. I want to plant a tree, she said one Sunday morning. Michael blinked. A tree. Yes, Grace said, eyes steady. In the backyard, something that grows long after we're gone. At first, everyone thought it was symbolic, but Grace had something real in mind. She invited the whole extended family, cousins, nieces, old friends. She sent handwritten invitations titled The Parker Tree Ceremony. for everything that grows after pain. They spent a week preparing, cleaning the backyard, building benches, hanging fairy lights in the trees. Michael made a chalkboard sign that read, "Healing isn't loud, it's a seed." On the day of the ceremony, over 40 people came. The sun shone gently through soft clouds. The scent of lilacs floated in the air. Linda, in a floral dress, stood beside Grace, holding a small potted oak tree. Ethan and Sarah were in charge of music and photos. Michael documented everything with his old camera. Grace gave a short speech. "I once thought healing came in big moments," she said. "But it doesn't. It comes in the quiet, the choosing to try again, to speak, to forgive. This tree isn't just for us. It's for every family who forgets they're still growing." Then, one by one, each family member added a scoop of soil. Michael tied a ribbon around the sapling's trunk. Sarah placed a tiny wooden sign that read, "The Tree of Second Chances." Ethan surprised everyone by reading one of his poems. "We are the roots that didn't rot, the branches that didn't break, the storm didn't win. Because we stayed, there wasn't a dry eye." After the planting, they shared a meal under the trees. Old stories were told. New memories were born. Linda hugged Michael tightly. "Thank you for coming home." Michael smiled. "Thank you for making it feel like home again." Later that night, Grace sat alone by the tree, watching its leaves flutter. Sarah joined her, curling up beside her. "Do you think it'll grow tall?" she asked. "Taller than us," Grace replied. "And strong." Grace looked at the girl beside her, the family around them, the laughter echoing in the warm spring air. "It already is. Families aren't perfect. They break, they bend, they lose themselves in silence. But when they choose to try again, when they plant seeds of kindness, of listening, of love, they grow back, stronger, deeper, unshakable." This was the story of the Parker family, but it could be yours, too. Because healing doesn't begin when things are perfect. It begins when someone says, "Let's try, together."